Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here in Hungary, just outside Budapest at the Hungaroring racetrack for the round 2 of the 2023 ESET Cup Series. You are joining us right on the starting grid, right before the first sprint race of the GT Championships, and you are joining us here right alongside the brand new full electric Renault safety car. So that's something quite interesting to be looking at right now. But let's, this is a car that actually is not gonna make that much sound. So let's see some cars that definitely will. The B8 Alpina, our beautiful, wonderful pace car, but the GT machines, the V6s, the V8s, the V10s, all of the roaring cars that we are getting excited about here for this afternoon. And we have got Igor Salakvarda, Filip Salakvarda, and Igor Salakvarda definitely there as well, his dad, yeah, on the grid as well. But Filip Salakvarda, his son, taking pole position for the first sprint race of the day. Let me just see if we can get a couple of words from the pole man. So Filip Salakvarda won one of the 2 sprint races for the season opener in Germany, and Filip is now on pole position again. Hi Filip, you are going to enjoy a beautiful Saturday afternoon. What is your view before this race? You had a nice fight with BMW in the last round. What do you think is your chance today?
Yeah, hopefully we had good qualifying. Hopefully we will do the good start, like in Oschersleben, and hopefully we have some nice battles against the prototype and BMW, and hopefully we stay in front and win again. Try to stay on the track.
Thank you very much. That's Filip Salakvarda, your pole sitter for the GT Sprint, and then ARC Bratislava and their prototype. They did not take this beautiful car in the previous round to Germany, but now in Hungary we are going to see some Le Mans style. So, Miro, you are going to get some beautiful Saturday drive, don't you?
Sorry, I don't listen now.
Okay, how are you looking forward to the race in your Le Mans special?
I hope will be better because I run all season with prototype. Is better for me like GT.
Okay, thank you very much. We need to get away from the grid, so let's just skip through the nearest positions as we have to clear the grid. We have got Neil Verhagen, who scored the other sprint race victory in Germany, and alongside him Libor Milota. And then for the GTC class, it's Denis Vasek alongside Joachim Galash on row number 3. So the drivers are now off for the formation lap for the first GT sprint here in Hungary. And as I mentioned on the grid, it is Filip Salakvarda who scored a pole position and a victory in the season opener in Germany at Oschersleben. But he also took a fight with Neil Verhagen, who scored the other win in one of the 2 sprints. So they share a win apiece, and they are now also head-to-head together. We're in the lead of the championship standings. It is Filip Salakvarda on pole here in Hungary. Alongside him, Miro Konopka in his LMP3 Ligier, and behind them Neil Verhagen and Libor Milota, the other two GT3 cars. Behind them, it's also bound to be interesting because we have got the GTC class then, and it was Mechanik Motorsport that was leading the class in Germany, and their new juniors, Matěj Pavlíček and Joachim Galaš, sharing victories in the two sprints. But although they managed to leave the other GTC car of Denis Vasek in the rearview mirrors the last time out, it is actually now Denis Vasek who beat them to it in the qualifying earlier on today, and that means that the Czech driver is now heading the GTC field, but with both of Mechanik Motorsport Lamborghinis right behind him, so that should get interesting as well. Both Joachim Galaš and Matěj Pavlíček definitely hungry for more success here in Hungary. Piotr Vera in 8th overall, alongside Pavlíček. Behind them, Petr Kačírek and Franz Lamer. In row number 6, that is Alexander Obert and Petr Brecka. In 7th row, or row number 7, Pavel Sovička. Didn't really get that much running the last time out because of technical issues. Alongside him, Zeno Kovač, the local driver in the BMW M4, prepared by Trevor Racing. Then it's Kurt Wagner and Bob Bau, Tomáš Konvička, Ivan Vlachkov, Frano Duberta, and Nemanja Milovanovic in the allowed DCRs. And we are now getting ready for the racing action here in Hungary. Filip Salaquarda on pole in his Audi R8, the latest Evo 2 spec, getting ready to pounce, and away we go. The lights are green and we are racing here in Hungary. Filip Salaquarda already aiming for the first corner of the track, and look at Neil Verhagen in the BMW. Ooh, bit of a crazy braking for Filip Salaquarda. He did have issues stopping the car in time, but he did manage to do so in the end. And Neil Verhagen up to second. And we do have one of the Mechanik Motorsport Lamborghinis now leading the GTC class. It seems that that is Joachim Galaš, who has already dealt with Denis Vasek into the first corner. So there is a change in the race lead there as well, whereas Miro Konopka has dropped a couple of positions in his Ligier, so will now have to play catch-up. And we've also got Libor Milota dropping down the order. He is already behind Piotr Vera, so it is mixed up pretty heavily now after a couple of corners, so a pretty dramatic start to the first GT sprint of the second round of the championship. And so there we go with Filip Salaquarda leading from Neil Verhagen, and Neil Verhagen is definitely not going to be just sitting around waiting. He is trying to stay together with his Czech opponent. They enjoyed a wonderful fight in the previous round at Oschersleben, and more is to come in the 25 minutes of today's race, as they are now joined together right on the track. No prototype between them, so they now have it all to fight it out here in Hungary. And Neil Verhagen, the BMW factory driver from the Roe Motorsport team, enjoying his ESET Cup program with Trevor Racing, sharing the duties behind the steering wheel of the BMW M4 GT3 together with the team owner and team boss Gregor Žigo. And for the first sprint, it is Neil Verhagen taking part, and he is now trying to give Filip Salaquarda a proper run for his money. So we've done the first lap of the race. There are the remaining cars, which is a nice mix of GT4s and some of the TCRs as well. We've got a 31 strong field all the way to Nikola Radnic right now. Salaquarda together with Verhagen, they have already run away from everybody else. And it's Joachim Galash leading the GTC class in P3 overall from Denis Vashek. So there's the fight between the two Lambos. Matěj Pavlíček losing ground at the start as he dropped the 8th overall. And he is now trailing the two GT3 Mercedes cars of Libor Milota and Piotr Vera. It seems as though Milota has overtaken Vera. Right at the start, Milota dropped behind the Polish opponent, but he is now back on top of this respective fight. And there is the day-glow yellow ARC Bratislava prototype making its way through. Konopka is already ahead of both the GTC cars. That means Galash and Denis Vashek. There are the two GT2 Motorsport cars. Both different machines, both different classes, but the same livery for this season. Denis Vashek got his car a new coat for the 2023 season, and it's now wearing the same sort of ruby and white livery, just like that Mercedes of Libor Milota. Salakvarda extended his lead to just over 1 second across the line, so he's now shaken off the immediate pressure from the young American. And Miro Konopka is going to be attempting to get back into this fight. Let's see what his respective lap times are in the process. Salakvarda leading, and he's just also set the fastest lap of the race, 1:45.1. Neil Verhagen did 1:45.3 on his previous attempt. 20 minutes left on the clock right now. So we've just done the first fifth of the race, first 5 minutes. And it's been a pretty intense race number one among the GTs. That's what we definitely like to see. Denis Vashek has now dropped 1 place overall, but not one in his class, as he made way for his teammate Libor Milota, who is trying to get back into his fight. And if I'm not mistaken, is the race neutralized? Yes, the safety car is on track. Safety car is now on track because we've got one of the slower cars, and that appears to be one of the TCRs even, is there in the runoff of the penultimate corner. That seems to be the Chevrolet Cruze. Is that Zoran Kastratovic? I believe it might be. Chevrolet P26 of the TCX class. And although it's a pretty long shot, I believe that the right rear wheel is sort of not pointing in the direction it should be pointing. There are track marshals with a fire extinguisher just in case. Because of course when you stop abruptly, there it is, the car, yeah, the right rear tire has had a pretty large hit against the barrier, apparently. And of course, when you stop so abruptly, your engine stops cooling immediately, but it's still very hot, as are the brakes, which means that various components might actually immediately catch fire. So hot they are. Because of course, the car's cooling is counting with the car moving, and the air to be streaming through the cooling vents. And if they are not, then for example the brakes catch fire pretty much immediately, and that's what seems to have happened on that Chevrolet, which means that the track marshals had to be on the spot with the fire extinguishers immediately. The rest of the pack is now bunched up together once again, which is a good news for Miro Konopka, as he was losing some 7 seconds to the fight for the race lead. So he's now caught up, as has everybody else. And that situation has obviously neutralized the race for the rest of the pack. Well, for the entire pack, actually. But given fresh chances to the rest of the pack. So, It was a pretty hectic and dramatic opening laps of the race. Nothing too dramatic, no major crashes, but we did see some proper order mix-ups, which is always good for the show. Some drivers quite careful at the start, some rather opportunistic. Luckily no shunt anywhere in the field, apart from Kastratovic's hit against the barrier. So it is Filip Salaquarda leading from Neil Verhagen. That is their fight for the race win. Miro Konopka in third. He's the only prototype, he's the only entrant in the D5 class. He took the Lamborghini, the GT3 Lamborghini, to Oschersleben the last time out, but apparently that's not his perfect idea of a weekend drive. And he was actually in the first place going to take his prototype to Germany, but then he decided against that, and the Slovakian team did have some technical trouble with the Lambo, but now they are back with their prototype. With the Ligier, and behind him it is Joachim Galash leading the GTC class in the colors of Mechanik Motorsport team, leading from Denis Vashek in the GT2 Motorsports color. Directly behind him, the other GT2 Motorsports car, however entered in the GT3 class. It is of course the AMG Mercedes, driven by Libor Milota, last year's sprint race champion. Piotr Vera behind them in 7th. Maciej Pavlíček in 8th and 3rd in the GTC class. From Franz Lamer and Alexander Ober completing the top 10. Behind them Petr Brecka, Petr Kačírek, Zeno Kováč leading the GT4 class. From Pavel Sovička in the KTM GTX. Kurt Wagner in 15th. In the 3rd Mechanik Motorsports Lamborghini Super Trofeo, which is going to take part in the endurance race later on today as well, where Kurt Wagner is going to be sharing his driving duties with Josef Zaruba. Josef Zaruba, of course, a well-known name, A, within the Mechanik Motorsports family, and B, also within ESET Cup Series, and he has taken on the role of a driver's coach for the little two donuts, as they like to call them, Maciej Pavlíček and Joachim Galash, the two youngsters, the two newcomers actually in the GT world. But Maciej Pavlíček did race in with the GT4 KTMs previously. For the RTR projects, and Joachim Galash, he was best junior of the overall ESET Cup in 2020, back in that COVID-stricken season, and he then took on the challenge of European TCR in the colors of Yannick Motorsport the last season, but now him and Maciej Pavlíček, they are both entered in the junior program of Mechanik Motorsport. And as the race is neutralized, just one sort of funny side story for you. You know, as Josef Zaruba is training his, the team's youngsters, he's sometimes trying to give them hard time, really to push the best out of them. And of course, for example, when you stall the car trying to get it going, there are jokes on your head immediately, but you should have seen the situation in today's qualifying for the endurance race earlier on today when Pepa Zaruba took over the car from Kurt Wagner, and
was about to leave the pits for the track, and he stalled himself. You should have seen the pure joy on the faces of Matěj Pavlíček and Joachim Galáš as they said, haha, now the master has done the same thing as we do. Everything immediately posted on social media, so if you want to get a bit of that joy, just make sure that you find the teams and the drivers' accounts on Instagram, for example, and enjoy that moment for yourself. In the meantime, we definitely hope that we will get going again, because it's been taking quite some time to get rid of the crashed Chevrolet, which is still there actually, and the flatbed has been on the scene. And it appears that it's actually going to take some time before we get rid of the stricken TCR. Let's just hope that we will get some more racing action still today, because that still seems like it's going to be a while. There were actually already quite a lot of head shakes yesterday when the track was actually quite full in the opening practices of the weekend, and sometimes getting the order correct and getting the correct cars on the track took a little while, which meant that at points drivers didn't really get that much running in the opening practices. Nine and a half minutes left on the clock, and the race is still neutralized. I don't know what the issue is with the Chevrolet, but it's still parked against the barrier, and oh, there it is. Good. So it's actually right now on the back of the flatbed being taken into the... Just look at that. That must have been a pretty hard hit. Whatever happened there. I'm not sure whether that was a simple driver's error or that was a result of one of the fights on the track, but the damage seemed quite significant on the car. The driver was okay, that's the most important thing. He has already leapt out of his car, and now the car is being brought back to the pits, which means that the hazard is gone now and we should get going again. So we are now getting ready for the race restart, with Filip Salaquarda leading the way from Neil Verhagen, Miro Konopka behind them in third. And the question now is, are we going to see the fight for the race lead? And is Miro Konopka going to get in the mix as well with his Le Mans prototype, with his LMP3 Ligier? And the green flags are on. The green flags are out. Whichever way you like to call it. Either way, we are now roaring again and coming back onto the start and finish straight, and we are racing here in Hungary. Filip Salaquarda returning back to the start and finish line and bringing the rest of the pack together with him. Salaquarda leading, Neil Verhagen already having a look immediately. Filip Salaquarda trying to cover off the inside line into the first corner. They are still staying closely together. How does it look in the fight for the lead among GTCs? I saw Joachim Galash still leading the class as he successfully defended his first place from Denis Vasek into the first corner. Miro Konopka in third. Immediately getting a little lonely there in his class. Pace they got, just lapping the track so fast, absolutely flat out. They're definitely going for it. It's not like they're just cruising home and trying to simply enjoy the ride, but this is a proper fight. 5 minutes left on the clock. Neil Verhagen with his target locked. When it comes to the brands, it's a big German fight for pride. Audi versus BMW. And it's a team from the Czech Republic versus a team from Slovakia. Really braking so hard into the chicane. There's the crashed car of Zoran Kastratovic already back in the pits. So there is quite a lot of work waiting for the team until tomorrow's race number 2. But let's get back to this fight for the race lead. In the meantime, Libor Milota has climbed up the order as he's dealt with the 2 GTC cars of Denis Vasek and Joachim Galash. That also means that Matěj Pavlíček is now together with Denis Vasek, so there is a nice fight for the GTC victory, and it's the trio of Lamborghinis. Galash, Vasek, Pavlíček. So a lot to choose from right now at the track. Filip Salaquarda trying not to put the foot wrong. Neil Verhagen definitely piling on the pressure. Filip Salaquarda, he's had a lot of motorsport experience, so definitely at least enjoying that pressure from the American youngster. Filip Salaquarda has driven pretty much anything on wheels in his career. Once also on his way through the single-seater ranks, as he, for example, did the World Series by Renault. He also did the single-seater Nations Cup of the A1 GP, and he also did the football Super League formula for the Prague's AC Sparta Praha. But that is way back then. He then entered the world of GTs and enjoyed years and years of successful racing. And now he's back for this season into the ESET Cup Series in his father's team, ISR Racing. There was the other Trevor Racing's Beamer, but that was the M4 one. Driven by Zenokovac. So are we now on the last lap of the race? We pretty much should be. And Filip Salaquarda giving it absolutely everything he has, as he's just set another fastest lap of the race, 144.5, and he was just over 0.3 of a second faster than Verhagen. So Neil Verhagen trying to stay together with Salaquarda, but not really in the position to actually launch an attack. It's definitely not easy here in Hungary. It's a tight and twisty and short circuit, so not a lot of space, but there is still a fight for the P2 overall in the GTC class. Denis Vasek has already had one of the Mechanic Motorsports Lambos slip through early on in the race, right at the start, but now he is trying to not let the other one do the same. Matěj Pavlíček, he had a poor start into the race, but then caught up together with Vasek, with a little help of the safety car as well. They bunched up the field. Now there are still a couple of corners remaining. We are going back to the race front, basically, because we are now going to meet the finish line. Filip Salaquarda is there, and he is taking the second victory of the season in his Audi R8. The latest spec, Filip Salaquarda winning the first sprint of the 2023 second round in Hungary. Neil Verhagen has to settle for second, but he staged a beautiful fight, and he definitely put Salaquarda under pressure. Miro Konopka coming home third, and it is Libor Milota fourth, but Joachim Galaš then scoring a victory in the GTC class in his Mechanic Motorsport liveried Lamborghini after a beautiful getaway at the start of the race. Denis Vasek coming home second in the GTC class, and Matěj Pavlíček coming home third from Piotr Vera in his GT3 Mercedes. Alexander Ober in ninth, but winning the GTX class with his Lamborghini Huracan. Franz Lahmer overall P10. We have got Zenokovac taking a victory in the GT4 class in 13th overall. And it is Nemanja Milovanovic in his Hyundai i30 scoring the touring car, or TCX class win, as he is 17th overall. The other cars taking the checkered flag as well. So it is Filip Salaquarda victorious from Neil Verhagen, Miro Konopka third, Libor Milota fourth, Joachim Galaš in fifth from Denis Vasek and Matěj Pavlíček. Those three are, of course, the GTC class leaders and winners. Piotr Vera 8th from Alexander Ober and Franz Lahmer. That is your top 10. Behind them, it is Petr Brecka, Petr Kačírek, Zenokovac, Pavel Sovička scoring second in the GTX class, Kurt Wagner in 15th and 6th overall in GTC, Ivan Vlachkov in 16th. Behind him, Nemanja Milovanovic, Franjo Dubreta, Kalman Bodiš, Richard Vosic, Günther Wiesmayer, Andrej Lah, Grega Šimunovič, Christian Wimberger, Tomáš Konvička, Matěj Košič, Hans-Peter Eder and Bob Bau, and we lost Zoran Kastratovic, Antal Žigo and Nikola Radnic. Well, actually, Antal Žigo and Nikola Radnic did not even take place at the start of the race, but they were entered in the entry list. So Zoran Kastratovic actually the only non-finishing cars of this race after that crash in the second to last corner. Everyone is now getting back into the Parc Fermé, and some cars are even going to be immediately weighed and scrutinized by the technical stewards. So it is Filip Salaguarda scoring his second victory of the season out of 3. So a good start from the Czech team and the Czech driver into the 2023 season. There is another race planned for tomorrow, of course. We are going to see the second GT sprint after the second GT qualifying tomorrow. So the GT sprint comes at 1:40 p.m. And of course, that is not all from the GT world today, because to close off today's program, we are going to have the 1-hour endurance race at 6 p.m. Now we are going to have a bit of a break, but then we are going to be back with more racing. There's still Clio Cup racing, there's still TCR Eastern Europe, there's still the Twingo Cup, and there's still the endurance race waiting for us. So still a lot to be looking forward to on the Saturday's program here from Hungary. And as we are now being presented with the graphics results, we are going to, as I mentioned, make a little bit of a break. That's your program. My program is probably going to be beaten up in one of the Hungaroring's back alleys by Pepa Záruba. That's one of our inside jokes for the moment right now. Anyway, we'll be back with more action a little later on. And until then, have a wonderful, wonderful time wherever you are, whatever you are doing.